We are live. Welcome, everyone, to the new biennium here on Ways and Means. Really glad to be here with all of you. Today's January 5th. And we're not doing anything formal at all, but we are live streaming because we have a quorum. So let's try to not pretend we're not live streaming to some extent to have a semi-natural conversation. Sorsha can't be here, and she's sorry about that, to get to know folks that she doesn't know. But she will get everyone's cell phone numbers, and please be attentive to cell phones, because she'll text you if we're like gonna gather after the floor, and sometimes we'll have to gather quickly to hear something. And she'll also send out emails about when we're gonna gather. As I said a second ago, an exciting refrigerator and microwave down the hallway, which feels like a big plus from being downstairs last year. Trying to term this the new penthouse, so we can adjust to our new digs. And last piece of housekeeping before we just have a conversation is that we have a +3 room limit. So that's everyone at the table, Sorsha +3. And in the interests of some degree of air quality, we're going to enforce that. And all the committees are trying to enforce that to the best of my knowledge. So I'd love if we could go around, say your name, say something about you. You're welcome to many sentences or just one sentence. It's really up to you. And then I have another go around from there. We're going to meet again we're going to meet one more time after the floor at 2. So we'll have 2 little 1-hour sessions today. Yes, I think the governor's at 2. So we'll meet again at 3 after that. The agenda is always posted on the website. We tend to try to post it earlier, on the earlier side so that people can look ahead. Do our best to get documents out as much in advance as possible, though of course we'll fail at that regularly. And I'll start with the go-round. Does that sound good? So I'm Emily, everyone knows that, from Brattleboro, which is a delightful little, very strange and lovely corner of the state. As I think I've reminded folks on the floor before, just because it happens in Brattleboro doesn't mean it's going to happen everywhere. We have our own quirky way of being, and I pretty regularly am sort of balancing what makes sense for the whole state versus what makes sense for Brattleboro, and sometimes go with what makes sense for the whole state, because we have a lot of capacity and a lot of energy down there. I appreciate that and hope that for the rest of the state. I'm going to stop there. I'm really happy to be here with all of you, and I would really appreciate any and all conversations about what would make this a place where you feel like you can get your work done well and you can serve your constituents well, because it's an incredible honor to be sitting here, and it's an incredible honor to be guiding this process with all of you. Want to go next, Bill?
Sure. Bill Canfield from Fairhaven. Been here for 9 terms. I'm a self-employed barber stylist. I have my shop, Hair Haven, in Fairhaven. I have,
So good.
yeah, I have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. And I'm community-minded back home, and glad to be here.
Before we go to Carl, I'm going to add, I have a son who's going to turn 18 on Monday. And so I might be a little full of the feelings next week, because I feel very proud, and it's a big thing in life. So, how are you?
I'm Carl Demeril. I'm from Corinth, and this is my second non-concurrent term in the House. I served on corrections and institutions before, and really thrilled to have ended up here, and very much looking forward to the work we're going to do together. In Corinth, I'm a construction worker and carpenter, and a member of our select board, and volunteer at Northeast Slopes. So if any of you ever come to Northeast Slopes to ski on a Sunday, you will see me there running the T-bar or running around keeping things going. So So I hope if any of you do ski, I hope, first of all, I hope we get some snow.
Oh, yeah.
Then,
It's cold enough.
you know, if you do ski, come visit on a Sunday.
My name is Carolyn Brannigan, and I'm new to serving with most of you, although I have served with Jim Maslin and Canfield on the Ways and Means Committee, first under Michael Bahalski and then with Janet for many years. So this is my second time around on Ways and Means, and I'm delighted to be here, really. I really wanted to be on this committee again. So this is I think it's my 10th term here in the State House, but it hasn't all been consecutive. I was on the Ed Committee first and then Ways and Means for a long time. I moved to the Senate for a while, and then I took a 2-session vacation, and now I'm back. So I'm really glad to be here. My husband and I have been married for 46 years. We are having a party when it's 50, so you'll get an invitation, but we're going to see if we last that long. And we have 3 children. They're all in their 30s, and 2.5 grandchildren, 9, 5, and to be born in March. So you'll hear.
Congratulations.
Oh, and I have breast cancer. That's why I'm wearing this funny thing on my head. I'm in the middle of chemo, but almost done, and then I have radiation, so that will last pretty much the whole session. I'll be doing something. But I feel wonderful. I especially feel good being here. People are so warm and welcoming, and it's really great, and it allows me to not think about being sick. So anyway, hang with me. The doctors say that I will be okay. I just have to go through all the process.
Congratulations
Yes, thank you.
for being repeat for 10 terms. Wow.
Yeah, Ways and Means is a great place to be
Yeah.
because you learn a lot. So I'm done.
Peter Anthony, I'm one of 2 reps from the city of Barrie. I also have had a stint on Ways and Means during the 2019-20 sessions. Then I went over to government ops and was very busy with elections, reapportionment, pension stresses. Happy to be here. I have both a white collar and a blue collar background in terms of my employment and work and intellectual life. And I'm delighted to be back in Ways and Means. Thank you.
I'm Kurt Taylor from Colchester, one of 4 representatives in Colchester, one of 2 representatives from what's called the village side of Colchester. It's actually 2 districts. Seth Chase is the other one from the village. On the other side is Pat Brennan and Sarita Austin. And this is actually my 4th term. The last 3 terms I've been in corrections and institutions, and it's good to move now to something new. And I'm looking forward to doing Ways and Means.
I'm Chris Matos. I'm just north of Kurt up in Milton. And this is my, guys telling Carl, 3.5 term. I was appointed in 2017. I'm a realtor. I own a property management and excavation business. And my wife is due with our first kid in 5 weeks, February 10th.
Awesome. Nice.
Thanks for telling us. I remember you kept your marriage a secret, so I'm glad to know.
So I might be out randomly one day. Get to that.
Send a text.
Maybe more than one day.
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
one or two.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
My name is Scott Beck. I'm from St. Johnsbury. This is my 5th term in the House. The first 2 I was in education during the Act 46 and 173 wars. And the last 3 I've been in House Ways and Means. I'm married. I have 6 children. 3 are out of school, gainfully employed in Vermont, and 3 are still working their way through their university work. And I am a longtime educator. I teach at St. Johnsbury Academy, and my wife and I we own the local bookstore in St. Johnsbury and operate that. And I have a lot of dogs. They're all my wife's.
Jim Maslin, this is actually my 13th term, if you believe it, but, you know, and it shows, right? I lived in the Upper Valley all my life, except when I've lived in other places. But it's my home, you know. My first paying job after college was rehabilitating torn apart inner city housing in New Haven, Connecticut. And I can say with some honesty, I've been doing the same thing ever since. I mean, fixing, building, rebuilding, building new. I'm very concerned about energy in homes. You see, I served in a whole bunch of different committees, and they're all education, you know, worthwhile. And I can tell you some funny anecdotes about some of my former committee chairs who are no longer here. Not chairs, excuse me. Yeah, Tom Costello. He was chair. Anyway, but this is the place to be. You know, I mean, a lot of policy committees are done several weeks before the end of the session. Their work is done, but not here. Bills keep coming in, and we work until we could say with a smile on our face, or maybe not quite accurately, but we in many cases work to the last day, or almost the last day. And that's so we cover a lot of bases and have to learn a lot of things, and I find it eminently useful, worthwhile. Glad to be here.
Catherine Sims. I live in Craftsbury with my husband and my 2 boys. We're 3 and 5. So we're like in the thick of it. It's so fun. Sleep now while you can.
Yeah, right.
And this is my second term. I was on Energy and Technology Committee that no longer exists. And really excited to be here for all the reasons you all have said. What an opportunity to kind of have a high level over all the important things we're doing here. I moved up to Vermont to work on a dairy farm, and then did farm to school and nonprofit work, and now do nonprofit consulting, helping small organizations with strategic plans and fundraising and stuff like that. Can't wait for snow so we can get back to skiing. And
Hope so.
Yeah, excited to be here. Honored.
Great, so my name is Julia Andrews. Today's my second day. So I'm definitely one of the newer members here. I live in Westford, and I serve Westford and a portion of Milton, so Chris and I are familiar. I probably live closer to you though, Carolyn, because I live like maybe a mile from Fairfax.
Oh, wow.
Which is fun because it's right on the county border as well. I have 2 teenage daughters. My 19-year-old is launched and living in Boston and starting to work as a chef. And my 17-year-old is still in high school. And I would say we love all things food. My chef daughter is evidence of that. And sports. So I'm just really looking forward to being part of this committee and getting to know all of you.
Thanks. You have agreed to be our clerk, and that is very much appreciated. Thank you very much. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Just your name and where you're from.
Yeah, David Cunin. I'm with McCrassen Group from South Burlington, but I live in Burlington.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to make a committee norm of like regularly asking the people on the bench to introduce themselves so that we're not all just wondering who that person sitting on the bench is. I think doing that out loud is nice. And I'd love, and then usually we close the door when we are started. So if you are walking up, the door is closed, come in quietly. If the door is open, it's just a free-for-all conversation. I want to do another go around. This is the game that everyone's been waiting for. What's your favorite tax or fee? Yeah.
Favorite tax or fee?
Favorite tax or fee. And if that feels like a hard one for you,
It is.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
you can go for what's your favorite thing that taxes or fees fund. Would you like to start? Thank you, Jim. Kind of you.
I know well, Carolyn, this has been my favorite, but something I'm concerned about is the fees that fund environmental conservation. And we haven't done them in this committee for 6 years, maybe, or something.
6 years.
The governor hasn't introduced a fee bill. But it turns out that there are thousands of fees throughout state government that most people don't know anything about because they never are subjected to them or experienced them. But a fee, as Carolyn likes to say, is something that funds a specific thing. It's not a general tax. And environmental conservation is strapped for revenue right now because fees have basically been dormant, flat for 6 or 8 years or something like that. And it's so I'm probably being too long-winded, but that's something that concerns me that we've tried to figure out in Ways and Means in the last several sessions. How on earth do we deal with fees when there's no fee bill? When the governor's secretaries and department chairs or whatever basically are forbidden from talking to us about that. So anyway, so there you have it.
Thanks. I'm gonna go next. And this is not designed to be like, what's your top legislative agenda item for the year? Like, this is really like, what's your favorite tax or fee? So my library used to have fines, a fee, and I loved paying them. I'd be like, you're trying to punish me, but I'm just so happy to give you more money to buy books so that more people can read. That always just felt like a very nice thing. And then my library discovered that the fines were actually keeping people from using the library. And they got rid of the fines because they realized that they did not serve the policy goal that they had been designed for. And so even though that is not something under our control in Ways and Means, I think it's a really great example of both a policy change related to fees that was really effective and a fee that I enjoyed paying because I knew it went to something I cared about. Do you want to go next one?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm going to focus on what I think is the best thing that we've done since I've been in this.
I love that.
On sales tax. A few years ago, we worked on it, Jim, and the entire House passed it. Scott was here. And it was including the online sales to collect the sales tax, and that was tremendous help during COVID.
Yeah, massive help.
And I think that's a good example of a time we got like ahead of policy so that we were ready when we were like really designing legislation for the future. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to beat Scott back to talking about education. I love that we all believe in the public good of educating our kids and that we have a system of raising revenue, and we've thought long and hard in the state about how to raise that revenue in a way that's equitable, and that we spent a lot of time last session thinking about how to make sure that those resources are equitably distributed to schools. And I'm excited to think more about how we broaden or think beyond just pre-K through high school as we maybe wade into childcare. And I also hope we're talking about property taxes and whether that's the right way to fund our ed fund. But the idea of all paying into a public good that we believe in and thinking thoughtfully about how to do that in a way that's fair and equitable is what is so exciting about this committee.
So my favorite tax is the $100,000 minimum AMT that we stuck on corporations.
That's a good one, Scott. I love that one.
I was there at the beginning.
I really enjoyed being on that conference committee. Yeah, that was fun.
I have a soft spot for that one too. Yeah.
Well, I was looking at the tax expenditures at one point, so I'm really, the airplane parts is kind of or work on airplanes is something I'm fascinated as to why that tax expenditure exists and the reasoning behind it. But the ones that I'm also interested would be the cannabis tax, because I see that as trying to figure out a tax which balances such that we get rid of the black market or we reduce the black market, but we don't also tax it too small or too high. It's a nice tax for looking at the ramifications of what it does and trying to figure out in advance how we do that properly and have the right amount of tax. The other one that somebody is the need for school construction and how that's going to hit us in terms of funding source for school construction. I realize it would mostly be bonded money, probably, but still there has to be a source for that. And I'm not sure how that interacts with our committee, but I think school construction is going to be a big hit to the budgets in general. So I'm interested in that one.
I'll go. I'm gonna go community oriented as well. My dog license fee that I paid for my town, so as a former select board member, when there's no dog warden, the select board becomes the dog wardens of record. So I am so grateful to people who pay their dog license fees so that we can find the owners of dogs that have gone rogue and that I can minimize the amount of time I spend being an ad hoc dog catcher. That's real.
Amazing.
If you ever end up with a dog, just call my wife, she'll take them off.
Good to know.
I'm last. Well, then we'll start and end with fees. I delivered the fee bill on the floor for 12 years in a row. And I love the fee bill because it just goes everywhere. There are really literally thousands of fees. And we received years ago 400 of them each year that needed to be looked at. The executive branch would give us these 400 fees and we would go along with their suggestions sometimes. We would not. Other times throw other fees out, get rid of them completely. So it was kind of an up and down thing, but each fee got a chance to be looked at and examined and evaluated for its fairness and for what the revenue was being used for. And I'm worried about it now because we've been so long without a fee bill. Costs don't stop going up. Costs go up. Pay costs, heat costs, all the expenses that government has to pay, just like we do in our households. And if we don't increase the fees, that is, make the user of these services and goods that the state provides, if we don't raise them to keep pace with the increases that taxpayers are picking up, that means the overflow goes into the general fund. So it continues to be paid for. Someone has to pay for it. So the question we're looking at is, will we ask the people who are using the pesticides and things to pay for them, or do we ask everybody else to pay for them? So I see that as a very serious problem and a misunderstanding really of the function of fees. So we need to look at that and decide what we're going to do this year.
I've been listening to you all and trying to come up with something that I think is interesting. But I'm going to say the cannabis tax. I think that watching that whole thing come together back in the previous biennium was a really interesting sort of education in how these things work. And I thought that the policy work that was done here around how to structure the tax piece of it was really thoughtful and well done. And so I'm not a cannabis user or anything like that, but thought that was really well done.
It's okay if you are.
Yeah,
Just so you
I had to throw that in there.
Just like beer.
We are on Zoom, so
I love that, with the exception of library fees, I think everything that's been brought up today is something that we're going to touch this year. Did you want to?
Do you want me to go?
You didn't go?
yeah.
I'm
No.
so sorry.
No,
I just remembered they
I should have-
the question.
I should have been quiet.
Sorry.
Mine's gonna go the other way. It's gonna be exempting tax on off-road fuel. So our farmers, our forestry workers, construction workers, people that run equipment that's not on the road, red fuel they call it. That's probably my favorite one because it's not a tax at all, and you don't have the on-road highway use tax. So that's my favorite.
Thanks. I have a little bit of housekeeping, but I think everything that got touched on is going to be, we're going to touch again in the first 2 weeks of the session. And for folks who are newer to the committee or refreshing with the committee, or even just refreshing with committee after the summer. We're gonna spend like a whole swath of time on education, like the whole finance system, as well as some things that we actually need to make decisions on mixed in there. We're gonna figure out what's been happening with corporate tax since we did the work we did, figure out what happened with the incredible tax credits that we passed last year, and do sort of a decent amount of updating as well as some pieces. Cannabis is something we're gonna need to monitor really closely for a number of years as it gets settled, and so we'll have housekeeping announcements from Sorsha that I'm gonna read from my phone for you all. Again, she's sorry she can't be here. So I'm gonna pass around her cell phone number, so I am not reading it into the internet, but really ask everyone when I pass around her cell phone number, send her a text with your name and yourself, so she can put you in a group text, so she can be in touch with you. If you're going to be late to committee or need to not be in committee for some reason, like, you know, you had a new baby or you're sick or whatever it is, please send Sorsha a text and send me a text. That way we don't worry about you or wait for you either. I think when you have a baby, you should take more than one day off. You're very welcome to. We'll keep you updated on what's happening. Sorsha's going to email folks at their legislative email address. And so if you're one of those people that for some wild reason wants to not use your legislative email address, please let her know. But she's going to default to using your legislative email address, and please keep an eye on it, especially when you're on the floor. She does not provide paper copies of anything unless you request them explicitly from her. We tend to be a low paper committee, and when we're getting presentations and there's a PowerPoint or something that we're looking at, we look at our own devices for the presentation. We don't share on the screen. So bring your device. If you need device help, we can get IT in here to help you. But prefer to use less paper. I like to have a printed agenda usually to just sort of keep track of things on, but beyond that, tend to not use the paper. But she's happy to provide it if you request it. You just have to request it. And if we're doing like a chart like this, printed. This is a report of all of the reports that are due this session. If anyone wants to look at it, you are more than welcome to. She tries to email out all the documents and presentations for the following day by 8:30 of the previous evening. In addition to them being posted on the website, because they don't often show up on the website until the next day, but she'll send them to all of us in advance. I know that's kind of late, but such is life in the fast-paced world of Ways and Means. If you are ill and you need to Zoom in, you can't vote remotely, but she can send you the Zoom link, so just email her and ask for it. And that is Sorsha bookkeeping. I'd love to do one, questions.
You just mentioned the zooming in.
Mm-hmm.
What are our sort of committee norms?
I think that is still being figured out by the Rules Committee. And so for now, you can't vote remotely, but you're welcome to Zoom in remotely, but that might change by tomorrow. Life, yes. And of course, if you have an opinion about anything the Rules Committee is doing, talk to your party leadership about your opinions about those things. Anyone else have any process questions? It's really important to me to have taxpayers come into the committee as well as advocates from various organizations. And so if you have constituents that are particularly interested in the issue, please let us know as we're setting up the agendas. Really happy to have a range of witnesses from around the state. And it's hard for me to pull those people out of my mind. So really, please reach out. I know it means a lot for people's understanding and experience of the democratic process to have a chance to testify. And I also think it makes for much better policy. So we are not going to hear from 50 witnesses on every bill, but if you do know someone who's interested in something, it's important that they have an opportunity to participate.
It's certainly been true in Ways and Means, and I think it's been true in other committees that I've served on. When we need witnesses, Source or you, Janet, whatever committee, really make an effort to pull in a diversity of opinions. And I tell people, campaign, you can testify, or someone. This is open process. It's your process, and that is actually essential. For the democratic process, and also so that we actually hear the different voices and try to fit them together.
And I have a lot of constituents that didn't realize that they could testify remotely, and so they're feeling much more interested in the process now that they don't have to drive up here 2 hours and then sit on an uncomfortable bench for many hours. Yeah.
A footnote to several of the members who have commented about the money they do not mind paying to the state of Vermont in one form or another. I think that's a very valuable opinion. Most of the time, people who are the most vociferous are the ones who resent that as opposed to appreciate it. And a little addendum, I had a fellow who's lobbying me to establish a program to fund the volunteer effort to help invasive species in our lakes and streams, for which there's no funding source and no program. Fish and Forest and Parks do not take that on. It's just out there on the will and goodwill of people who live around ponds in Vermont, which is, I think of it as a public asset. And so I heard people wouldn't mind paying for that. Just create a program and I'll pay.
Thanks. I'd also love to hear from national experts. And so if you follow an issue really closely and you know of national experts on that, I think that's, we don't often have national experts in the building unless like there's a strong lobby behind something. So if there's an issue that you're really close with and you happen to be following it nationally, please let us know about that too. I'm gonna do one more go round. And the question is, what is a quality? I know this is like so un-Janet for everyone who's been on the committee before, so, you're just gonna have to survive changes. What is one quality that you think is really important as a legislator that you try really hard to bring into this building? So I'm gonna say for me, it is curiosity and really staying both open to how things can end, but also open to all the things that can come up in between. Really sort of trusting that curiosity, and it feels different from an open mind, like really active curiosity can lead to really positive outcomes, both with individuals and long-term on policies.
Listening to all the different, as Jim talked about, the
Listen first, right?
I can't add to that. That's exactly what I was going to say too. I think oftentimes we come into this building with our own ideas about things, and if we're thoughtful about it, we can often find out that we're wrong. But if we don't have that openness, we don't have that curiosity, we don't listen, we're not going to make great decisions. So I think that's so important. And I'm not someone who talks a lot. Much more prefer to listen.
We're going around, hi Carol, going around and talking about sort of top quality, sort of a characteristic that you think is important to bring into the legislature. It can also be a quality that you don't think you have and you admire in other people, just as a heads up.
I want to say that I agree with the first two things that have been mentioned. The ability to listen especially is important. So I'll add a different one. I was thinking of listening, but the ability to do your homework. On this committee, I think it's especially important. Reading the materials that we've been given and making sure you understand it. And when people I'm assuming Joint Fiscal still comes in here quite a bit, they bring a wealth of information, and it's really important to make sure you understand all of it. And ask questions if you don't.
And all of the staff from Joint Fiscal that we work with are going to come into committee in the next couple days and introduce themselves, and we'll spend some time with them. And I think it's a tremendous resource that if you're coming over from another committee, you might not have had a lot of opportunity opportunity.
And they've changed so much in the last 5 years. I don't think I know any of them.
Yeah.
So it'll be good to meet.
Oh, no, we have a lot of new, and really incredible staff over there, so I'm excited for the opportunity.
Relating to that to some extent, myself, I'm a very focused person. I have difficulty doing more than one thing at the same time. So it's hard for me to listen and think at the same time or to talk and think at the same time. So it always amazes me when people say, okay, let's think about this, and then they immediately start talking. Because when someone says, let's think about this, I think silence. Let me think. If they're talking, I'm listening, and then I'm not thinking. So it's the ability to listen, but also the ability to think about what somebody is actually saying and trying to understand what they're saying, which I think is important. And relating to that in terms of reading bills and reports, there's a quote, read it as if you didn't write it. So you have to have a completely fresh look at it and say, what if I wasn't a legislator and I'm reading this? It's the same way with the article on the ballot that had to do with slavery. A voter reading that wouldn't understand what that proposition was all about. To us, it was very clear because it had underscores and strikeouts and things like that. We knew what was going on. But to most people, it was, they knew in general, okay, I'm voting against slavery. But I don't know how many of them really understood what was going on there. So in terms of reading bills, I find myself good at looking at it in a very fast way, saying, if I didn't know anything about this, would this make sense? And that's a quality that I think we all should take into account.
I'll build on what you just said because I'm a little different than you in that I tend to be doing like 50 things at once all the time. And that is not a productive way to make sound decisions. So like making time to actually set aside to think more deeply about issues, I think is really important. And something that I think as a culture we don't do enough of.
Everything that folks have mentioned really resonates with me. I was going to start with curiosity, so since you took that, I'll add something else. I have been trying to work on my own ability to sort of stay in an uncomfortable conversation. I think what I appreciate and value about the work that we do is we all bring different perspectives, and we're not always going to agree, and sometimes that can feel hard to talk through difficult things, but building that space to hear each other and to stay with that discomfort to get to a better solution than we could on our own. Hoping that this can be a space where we can agree civilly and respectfully, be better for it.
You're on this.
Scott's waiting for you, Jim. I don't know why, but he is.
Well, I said, listen,
Oh, yeah.
early on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
So let's see.
He's trying to buy time.
Ability to communicate clearly and concisely using correct terminology.
Lots of acronyms.
Did I take your answer?
With 4 or 5 other people. No, I was just saying my biggest thing I heard about is just listening. But like Scott said, what's the old saying when it's all been said before, but not everyone's said it yet? Real big on that, where, we'll see it on the floor quite often when 15 people say the same thing over and over again. But just listening, being concise with your thoughts and being able to communicate, I think is absolutely key. As I just said, what everybody else said.
It's okay to be aspirational.
I guess my concern, worry is to be sure I understand as much as one can impacts of a decision that we make or proposal that we make. On whom, how big. And I say that because taxes, in general, fees too, oftentimes have unexplored or unobvious, non-obvious impacts on persons or activities. And so to tease that out is always, for me, both a challenge and a satisfaction if I can feel comfortable saying I understand what I'm doing.
Carol, hi.
Hi.
Do you want to introduce yourself to everyone and then one quality about that you think is important to bring into the building?
Okay, so I'm Carol Odie, and I represent the far north end of Burlington. And being willing to ask questions and say I don't understand, and to work with our colleagues, who know something more, and that's a good thing to ask a question until you and get the information until you understand it. I think that's a big deal. And then going a bit about what you were saying is think about every single Vermonter and not be angry at any Vermonter. Just be like, okay, this is about all of us and everyone, caring about every Vermonter.
Thanks. I think with that, we can head down. Yeah.
Couple of things. One, ability to ask questions. Some people have been with me in committee know sometimes the first time I say something or ask something, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I have to fill in all the sentences that I left out in order to explain what I've meant. But eventually we'll get there. But the other thing is, I've had college classmates come to Ways and Means at times in the past, and one couple in particular, John Santa, his name is, he was like health commissioner for Kids Harbor in Oregon, I think, or something. And afterwards, John and I was asking what they thought, and they said, well, in effect, in your committee, it's hard to tell who's a Republican and who's a Democrat, which is very different from some big states where it's like Washington. Democrats on one side, Republicans on the other side. Chair runs the thing very strictly. This is quite a remarkable environment, I think, even if we don't recognize it some days. It's really quite remarkable. And the good thing about it is that it's, I don't know what the terminology is, maybe self-building or self-enforcing. It's hard to come in and work here for a couple of months and maintain an attitude that doesn't work. And there's no belligerence, there's no animosity, but sooner or later people say, well, geez, if I'm going to survive here and be effective, I'm going to have to behave myself, I guess you could say, or learn to be effective with the other people in committee. It's really quite, we could say, use a big word, it's transformative or something, but it's really, it's a privilege to be here compared to other places that we know about them. So.
I'm going to point out one thing.
Yeah, please.
Brannigan over here didn't tell us that she was a maple queen.
Yeah, I'll bring in some goodies eventually. I'm gonna get maple syrup again.
That sounds great. Thanks. Let's go to the floor and then come back just for a little bit to the floor.
Very cool.
Thanks.
All right, cool.
Four of us are sitting.
Yeah, I know, this is great. It's good work.
You and I.
Right, yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks for the number. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think all these important things that you know.
Address, of course, is after.
Oh, no, that's a question.
Yeah.
Let's want to have fun this session. Yeah, it will be. We'll learn a lot. It'll be good. All right.